Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another Reddit Stories video, and thank you for stopping by. Today, we're going to be getting into some really weird and disturbing stories. These are honestly some of my favorites, so I hope you all enjoy. And as always, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. But yeah, other than that, let's get right into the first story. When I was in 5th grade, I went to a science camp on a mountain in California. We had this night hike that was supposed to teach us about the different cells in our eyes. So we did it without any flashlights at all. Our eyes slowly adjusted to just the starlight. And honestly, it was pretty cool. Until the counselors made us walk a stretch of the path alone, one by one. We were 10 years old. And yeah, at least some of us were still afraid of the dark. So I was way too anxious to really pay attention to the instructions. One counselor went ahead through the bushes and radioed the other to start sending kids. Then my turn came up, and I started dragging my feet down the path until I hit a fork. I vaguely remembered the counselor saying something about it, or maybe I was remembering it wrong. Which way was I supposed to go? Was it even a fork, or was I just not seeing right in the dark? Mind you, this was a pitch-black mountain in California, with nothing around for miles other than the camp. I really didn't want to get lost. I looked behind me thinking about going back the way I came to admit that I didn't listen to the directions. But when I turned back to the fork, there was a man standing there. He looked Asian, wearing wireframe glasses and a white t-shirt. It was maybe 50 degrees up there on the mountain. I wasn't scared though. I didn't feel any bad energy from him. If anything, I was relieved not to be alone in the dark anymore. He gestured for me to go one way, so I did. I rejoined the rest of my class, and then the counselor radioed to send the next kid. I didn't think much of it for the rest of the trip. It wasn't until the bus ride home, when I was reflecting on the hike, that it hit me. I had never seen that man before. He wasn't one of the counselors leading the hike. He never came out with us, and he never showed up after all the kids had done their solo walk. I have no idea who or what he was. About 12 years ago, I was on a road trip back from a Blink 182 concert in Los Angeles. We were driving east through Arizona, heading all the way back to Ohio. A 33-hour road trip because the other guy I was with just loved Blink that much. Somehow, that meant we had to make this insanely long drive for just one concert. But honestly, the real point was spending time with these two girls. Anyway, I was the one driving when this happened. It was the middle of nowhere and the middle of the night. We came to a stop behind a long line of cars waiting for some road construction. The four of us were just sitting there talking for a bit. 2 girls, 2 guys. And I remember those rotating yellow lights on the construction vehicles and the red glow from all the brake lights in front of us. A few songs played while we joked around and laughed. One of the girls was smoking out the window. Then, after a while, we were like, haven't we been sitting here forever? So we start looking around. It's construction, right? Who knows what the delay is? So we wait. 20 minutes go by, then 30. Eventually, I'm like, are the construction guys even moving? So I get out of the car. There are orange cones everywhere, so I'm kind of picking my way through them carefully. And I'm not kidding. There's nobody in the construction vehicles. They're just sitting there, engines running, lights flashing, completely empty. I'm standing there like, what in the world? This traffic jam is pointless. We should just go around. So I look back at the other cars to try to wave at the drivers, but then it hits me. There's nobody in those cars either. We had been sitting at a traffic jam in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night, behind a bunch of cars and construction vehicles that were on, but nobody was in them. I jumped back in the car and we took off fast. And to this day, I have no idea what that was about. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a hallucination. I wasn't asleep. All four of us saw the same thing. We looked into those cars, and there was no one in any of them. I didn't stop to check for footprints or tire tracks or anything like that. I just thought, nope, we're getting out of here. I don't know if this story is actually real, but if it is, man, that must have been terrifying. I mean, I'm glad nothing bad really happened, but still, I can't even imagine what OP must have felt after seeing all those empty cars just sitting there. What do you guys think of this one? And what would you do if that happened to you? I grew up in a really old house that my mum inherited from her parents. Since it was built such a long time ago, the house sort of grew over the years. New rooms were added one by one whenever they were needed. By the time we lived there, it was actually pretty big. I have several older siblings, so the bedrooms changed hands a lot as they left for college. By the time I was in junior high, the only people still living there were me and one of my brothers. He was in college too, but his school was in the same city, so he still lived at home. Anyway, one weekend, my parents were out of town, and the only ones home were me and my brother. But he went out to party with some friends, so I was completely alone that Saturday night, just playing video games in my room. My bedroom was upstairs and had two doors, one that led to the hallway and another that led to a small staircase. That staircase went up to a sort of attic room. Over the years, that room had been used for all kinds of things. A bedroom, a TV room, a storage space, and then back again. At the time this happened, it was mostly used as an attic. It was filled with old stuff and boxes that my older siblings hadn't taken when they moved out. So there I was, playing my game, when around 1 in the morning, I started hearing someone whispering from the other side of the door that led to the attic. They were saying my name, quietly, over and over. Hey, open up. That attic also had another entrance from the garage, so I figured it had to be my brother, probably back from his party, a little drunk, and trying to mess with me. So I decided to scare him back. The door to the attic from my room was locked on my side, so I went downstairs and planned to sneak up the other way and catch him off guard. But when I got to the kitchen, I looked through the window in the door that led to the garage, and my brother's car wasn't there. I went to the front door and checked the driveway. Still no car. From there, I could see most of the street, and unless he parked far away as part of the prank, he definitely wasn't home yet. The only other thing I thought was maybe he left his car and got a ride home. But even then, something didn't feel right. I went into the garage anyway, still trying to convince myself it was just him. But when I got to the door that led to the stairs up to the attic, I noticed it was locked from my side. That's when I started feeling really uneasy. I went back upstairs, turned on the lights, unpaused my game, and tried to pretend nothing was happening. But the whispering continued. They kept saying my name, asking me to open the door. I tried to ignore it, but I was only about 14, and I honestly didn't know what to do. My brain was spinning. Either someone had somehow gotten into our attic and knew my name, or something else was going on. And this was before cell phones were common, so I couldn't just text my brother. Calling the cops didn't even cross my mind. I mean, what would I even say? After about 20 minutes, the whispering finally stopped. Around 3 in the morning, my brother finally got home. He was still a little buzzed, and I asked if he had come home earlier to try and scare me. But the look on his face said it all. He had no idea what I was talking about. When I told him what happened, he got even more freaked out than I was. We ended up sleeping in his room that night because neither of us wanted to be alone, even though he was supposed to be the grown-up one. Nothing else happened that night, and I never experienced anything quite like it again. There were a few weird things that happened in that house over the years, but nothing that intense. I'm not really someone who believes in the supernatural, but to this day, I still have no idea what was going on that night. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd actually opened that door. When I was a teenager, back in the 90s, I lived in a really old house with my parents. It was so old that it still had skeleton key locks on most of the doors. It was a strange house, and it had even stranger previous owners. The last of them had decided to remove both the tub and the door from the upstairs bathroom and move them downstairs. See, the house had a basement that, at some point, had been turned into a full separate apartment. It had a kitchen sink, a large bathroom, 2 big walk-in closets, and even its own entrance that led out to some stairs climbing up into the backyard. According to the deed, the place was supposedly haunted. An old man and an old woman who weren't related and had owned it at different times had both died in the house. The man had died of natural causes downstairs in the back bedroom, sometime in the 60s or 70s. The woman had died upstairs, but we never found out how or when. Either way, I believed it, because that basement was seriously creepy to be alone in. And since the lady who owned it before us had moved the only bathtub down there, we had to bathe in that basement. You constantly felt like you were being watched. I hated it. One of those big closets I mentioned was directly under the stairs and ran the length of the entire house. It was a long, narrow, stone-walled closet with wooden shelves running all the way through it. We stored Christmas decorations and random stuff in there. But as a kid, it scared me to death because I swore I could always hear something moving around inside. I'd open the old door, pull the light chain, and look inside. But of course, there was never anything there. Anyway, fast forward to when I was a teenager. It was Christmas Eve, and I was up late helping my mum bake cookies. My dad and younger brother were already asleep. My mum and I were talking while watching A Christmas Story, you know, the one that plays on repeat every Christmas. Out of nowhere, we suddenly heard this loud crashing sound, like an explosion followed by 2 huge thuds. It came from downstairs. That woke my dad up immediately. He came out into the living room wide-eyed, holding a baseball bat. We told him what we heard, and he said he was going to check it out. He told us to grab the phone and be ready to call the police if he said so. Me, being a tough teenager, couldn't just let him go alone, so I followed behind him as he started down the basement stairs. When we got to the bottom and turned the corner, we saw the heavy oak door to the closet had been ripped completely off its hinges and thrown across the hallway. It had slammed into a brick pillar that hid the water heater. The bricks and the stone walls down there were painted this dark brown color, and the door was white. It had hit the pillar so hard that it left white paint scraped across it and even chipped some of the brown paint off the bricks. The top corner of the door was smashed in, and the metal hinges were twisted and broken. No human could have done that. It was a heavy, solid oak door, the kind that's not easy to move even if you try. But it had been thrown with so much force that it tore right through the hinges and hit that brick pillar across the hall, hard enough to damage both the pillar and the door. And this wasn't even a narrow hallway. It was a good 8 to 10 feet wide. There was nothing inside the closet, but it looked like something had gone wild in there. The wooden shelves were broken. The stuff we stored inside was thrown everywhere, and even the light's pull chain had been ripped off. Only a little metal piece was left hanging. We never did figure out what caused that. It never happened again either. To this day, I can't explain it. Other strange things happened in that house over the years while I lived there, well into my 20s. But that night was by far the weirdest and hardest to make sense of. Man, I honestly don't know if I could live in a haunted house. Like, just the idea of always feeling like someone's watching you. Yeah, no. But, what about you guys? Have any of you ever had something weird happen in a house you lived in? If you have, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. I've always thought of myself as a pretty logical person. I believe in science, reason, all that. But this one experience, it honestly made me question everything because I still can't explain it. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, I went to a school friend's house for dinner. He had this really cool house that backed up to a huge open field in our town. The field was mostly empty, just a few bushes here and there, and a big hill with a tree at the top. That tree had a rope swing on it, and behind it were these thick bramble bushes that kind of blocked everything else off. It was summer, and after dinner, maybe around 6 in the evening, we decided to go out to the field and play on the swing. Now, just a quick side note. A few months before that, the same friend had introduced me to another kid named Liam. That's not his real name, but you get the idea. Anyway, back to that day. We're walking across the field toward the rope swing, and I see someone already on it. He's wearing all black and just standing on the wooden seat, swinging back and forth. And he's waving us over, kind of motioning for us to come closer. I said to my friend, "Hey, that looks like Liam." And my friend agreed. So we started walking a little faster. As we got closer though, I realized he wasn't really waving. He was making this rude hand gesture, like giving us the peace sign but flipped around, while still motioning for us to come up the hill. And honestly, that kind of fit his personality. Liam was a bit of a jerk sometimes, so we laughed it off and kept going. But then, as we got near the top, we had to move around some bushes. And when we finally got to the tree, he was gone. We thought maybe he was hiding behind the tree, but when we checked, there was no one there. Behind the tree was this massive wall of brambles, way too thick to crawl into. And behind that was a tall brick wall that fenced off someone's property. There was just no way he could have gone that way. From the top of the hill, you could see the whole field below, and there was nowhere to hide. No trees, no big bushes, nothing. And there's no way he could have snuck past us without us noticing. I remember saying, "I'm sure I saw someone up here," and my friend said the same thing. But there was no one. The swing wasn't even moving, like it hadn't been touched in hours. I tried to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, or maybe my imagination. But that's not the creepy part. A few months later at school, our teacher asked us to write a short story about an interesting experience we'd had in our lives. So I decided to write about that weird moment with the rope swing. Because honestly, at 9 years old, that was probably the most interesting thing that had ever happened to me. A few days later, my friend, 2 other boys from our town, and I were all asked to stay after class during lunch. The teacher was really upset. She thought we had copied each other's stories. She said, "Do you really think I wouldn't notice 4 people turning in the exact same story?" We were all confused. Like, what was she even talking about? Then she handed us our papers. And sure enough, we'd all written about the same thing. Every single one of us had described seeing a guy dressed in black on the rope swing, waving at us, making that same rude hand gesture, and then disappearing when we got closer. We all described it being around 6 in the evening, a warm summer night. Everything was almost identical. Now, maybe I could understand my friend writing the same thing, since he was there with me. But the other 2 boys, they weren't even close friends with us. One of them actually didn't even like my friend, and they looked just as confused as we were. One of them asked if I copied him, and I was like, "How? I don't even sit near you." That's when we realized we'd all had similar experiences, but on totally different days. The other boys said they'd seen it too. One while walking his dog with his parents, another while playing in the field with some other friends. Of course, our teacher didn't believe us. She thought it was all made up. But to this day, I still can't explain it. Whenever I tell people this story, they think I'm making it up. But I swear, it really happened. And ever since that day, I've believed there's something else out there. Because I honestly think whatever we saw, it wasn't a person. Alright, well, that's going to be all the stories I've got for today, guys. I really hope you enjoyed listening to them as much as I enjoyed reading them, because wow, these were actually pretty interesting. But seriously, thank you so much for stopping by. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like, maybe subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next one.